got another quick fabric tip Friday here. As you know, the last fabric tip I had was taking the fabric down around 90 degrees and how you can take an iron and put glue behind it and get an iron to make it stick to something. Well, here's a situation to where there's an opening, permanent opening here for a large fly wire to come out of this wing. So when this was all covered over, had a thin piece of metal that got sandwiched in, glued to the fabric, another patch glued over and let to dry for overnight. And when you have a piece of metal, thin metal, or the plastic grommets that glue to the fabric and then you put a reinforcement on, you could just cut this hole out and would be fine. But when you cut that hole out, the edge of that fabric on top of that metal, then the fabric there that's under is you got an open sandwiched area. So what I like to do is I put the metal down before this patch goes on. Then I go ahead and after it dries, I cut the hole out, but I cut the hole about this long and I let this fabric, if you'll think of it without this top on it, I let this fabric fold around on top, and that's when I do that iron trick, and that lets the fabric come down and around and up on top of this. Then I put a bed of glue on top. Then I cut my patch that goes all the way over all of it and put it down like you would a normal tape. Now this is closed off. Then I go in and cut this out about a 1/2 inch longer. Now this piece of tape I'm going to fold around that way. Well, as you can see, it's not in a situation, I mean, you could take an iron probably and break it vertical right there, but you're not going to get an iron inside to do that trick. If you go start putting glue on this and start pushing it around, it's going to be wet. You're going to keep pushing it and pushing it. You're making a 180 degree turn around that. And it may get to where it sticks, but if you look in there, it might be kind of raised in a couple places and probably will never come loose. What I like to do is get it in this situation, take my finger with a little bit of thin glue and just kind of prime this fabric good, and then get more and put another prime on the back side of that fabric under the bottom, then let it dry. Now that has your glue that's going into the fabric. Then I get some thick and do the same thing. I put a layer of thick under there and on the back side. Now you would think, now you got thick, you can start trying to glue it, but with it wet and making that 180 degree bend, it'll try to stick, and you have to catch it right at the right moment where enough of the reducers are out that it will stick. So I put the thick on there and then just let it completely dry. Now you've got glue all ready and it's dry, and as we know, AirTech glue activates itself with the reducers to re-enhance the gluability, I guess you'd call it, to an old bed of glue. So what I do at this point, I have all my thick glue there ready. I'll try to do this with one hand. I'll take a little bit of thin, and usually you can get by with just putting it on one side. And then while it's still wet and it goes against that thick dry side, you can push it around, and it's not too much wet because you only put it on one side. Now you could reach around and put it on the solid side, but I just put it on that side, and I can feel that it stuck down, nothing sticking up or anything. So I went right around in one motion. I put the thin on just this part and went right around onto the dry part there, and the thin on one side along with the dry combination, it just almost like an instant stick. Like I said, our product doesn't work like a contact because that has dry glue and that has dry thick glue. If I push that around, you know, a contact, after it's dry, you put them together and they'll bond. AirTech doesn't do that way. It has to be re-wetted on at least one side. So that's a way of getting it around something that's where you can't get an iron actually up in there on the flat side of it.